You said within hours of her being killed, you said that she was a domestic terrorist. How do you define domestic terrorist?
She weaponized her vehicle to conduct an act of violence against a law enforcement officer and the public.
How can
they are doing that.
How can you assert with certainty that she was trying to hurt the officer as opposed to she was trying to flee the scene?
If you look at what the definition of domestic terrorism is, it completely fits the situation on the ground. This individual, as you saw in the video that we released just 48 hours after this incident, showed that this officer was hit by her vehicle, she weaponized it, and he defended his life and those colleagues around him and the public.
The question is, I don't doubt, my position is, I wasn't there, I didn't see it. Some people say that it clearly showed that she was trying to hit him and did. Some people say, no, she was clearly trying to move her car and flee and get away. I don't know. What I'm saying is, how do you know? How can you assert for a fact within hours, before any investigation, this is what happened?
The facts of the situation are that the vehicle was weaponized and it attacked the law enforcement officer. He defended himself and he defended those individuals around him. That is the definition. When there is something that is weaponized to use against the public and law enforcement, that is an act of domestic terrorism. It happened in our shores. It happened here in our country. You don't get to change the facts just because you don't like them.
This may look like a tense TV exchange, but it's actually a test of how much power an executive agency can claim over the truth. What's really being tested here is whether law enforcement narratives are allowed to outrun independent review. This raises broader questions about accountability, transparency, and the public's right to verified facts. In this video, we'll break down how one early narrative became official policy, and what that means for democratic oversight.
You've also been criticized for your comments. The shooting, we should note, was Wednesday at 10:37 a.m. Eastern. Just over 2 hours later, the Department of Homeland Security put out a statement definitively asserting what had happened, defending the ICE agent, accusing Renee Good of domestic terrorism. That's a characterization that you reiterated in a press conference half an hour later. And Republican Senator Tom Tillis said, quote, "It was very unusual to have a senior law enforcement official to draw a conclusion about an event where the scene was still being processed. Generally speaking, law enforcement would recognize that a life was lost, that families are changed forever, the shooter's life will change forever. We're collecting video. We're trying to assess the situation." Why did you not wait for an investigation before making your comments?
Well, everything that I've said has been proven to be factual and the truth. This administration wants to operate in transparency. I have the responsibility as the Secretary of Homeland Security to know this information as soon as possible. Had just been in Minneapolis the day before, had already had conversations with officers on the ground and supervisors, and knew the facts, and decided that the department and the people of this country deserve to know the truth of the situation of what had unfolded in Minneapolis.
But with all due respect, Secretary, the first thing you said was, quote, "What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow." Correct. Because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and rammed them with her vehicle. That's not what happened. We all saw what happened.
It absolutely is what happened. Those officers had been out in enforcement action. A vehicle had been stuck. They had come to help get that vehicle out. That's when this individual started blocking traffic for minutes and minutes.
You said that the woman attacked them and surrounded them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle.
Blocked the road for a long time and was yelling at them and impeding a federal law enforcement investigation. And that's what you need to focus on, Jake, is they were breaking the law by impeding and obstructing a law enforcement operation. They were breaking the law already, and these officers were doing their due diligence of what their training had prepared them to do to make sure they were handling it appropriately.
You said within hours of her being killed, you said that she was a domestic terrorist. How do you define domestic terrorist?
She weaponized her vehicle to conduct an act of violence against a law enforcement officer and the public.
How can you assert with certainty that she was trying to hurt the officer as opposed to she was trying to flee the scene?
If you look at what the definition of domestic terrorism is, it completely fits the situation on the ground. This individual, as you saw in the video that we released just 48 hours after this incident, showed that this officer was hit by her vehicle, she weaponized it, and he defended his life and those colleagues around him and the public.
The question is, I don't doubt, my position is, I wasn't there, I didn't see it. Some people say that it clearly showed that she was trying to hit him and did. Some people say, no, she was clearly trying to move her car and flee and get away. I don't know. What I'm saying is, how do you know? How can you assert for a fact within hours, before any investigation, this is what happened?
The facts of the situation are that the vehicle was weaponized and it attacked the law enforcement officer. He defended himself and he defended those individuals around him. That is the definition. When there is something that is weaponized to use against the public and law enforcement, that is an act of domestic terrorism. It happened in our shores. It happened here in our country. You don't get to change the facts just because you don't like them. We will continue to look at this individual and what her motivations were. We know that there was, throughout that morning, she had harassed and impeded law enforcement operations. That raises the suspicion level with all of these law enforcement officers as far as paying attention to what her capacity is. And as you see on the videos, and they've proven out, that this law enforcement officer took the action that his training prepared him for, and he worked to make sure that he could save his own life and those around him.
How can you assert that there's no ambiguity in this before any investigation has taken place?
I had just been in Minneapolis and had been with those officers, had seen what they were facing on the streets every day, and had talked to their supervisors as soon as the incident happened and had gotten the facts and seen videos before I ever went to talk at that press conference. And the Trump administration and President Trump is the most transparent and open government that we've ever had. Give the public the information, give them what they need to know about a situation so they can have the truth as soon as possible.
So if this agents were perfectly fine, if everything he did was accurate, does that mean that other ICE agents should...
He wasn't perfectly fine. He was injured. He went to the hospital.
No, his actions were fine. I didn't say...
In fact, I think a lot of people and guests, and even you yourself, called this situation something very different and untruthful about what it was, as far as...
What did I say that was untruthful?
That this was not a correct definition of what was happening on the ground.
I said that your description, they were attempting to push out their vehicle and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with their vehicle, is not what we see on the videotape, and it's not.
It absolutely is the facts of what happened on the ground that day. They were there pushing out a vehicle earlier. They had helped each other.
But that's not what you said. That's not what you said. Yes, they were pushing out a vehicle.
Absolutely what I said. There's not one thing.
We all seen the video. I don't need to relitigate it. We've all seen the video. She is blocking the street. They approach her.
You haven't seen the video of the entire morning and the previous encounters with this individual.
Oh, we have aired it. Yes, we have. On Thursday, we were airing and noting the fact that she was there for several minutes, for minutes and minutes and minutes. She was protesting without question.
And at previous locations that morning, that these vehicles had been previously down the block on video that you haven't seen. There's more information that this individual was impeding law enforcement operations throughout the previous moments and hours before this incident happened.
The question is, what was she doing when she was moving her car?
The question
That's the question.
Is why are we arguing with a president who's working to keep people safe? Why are we arguing with law enforcement operations that have gone on in this country for years, and we're working to collect murderers and rapists and drug traffickers and fraudsters off the streets of Minnesota, and we don't have local law enforcement and local elected officials that are partnering with us to help do that work? Overwhelmingly, the people in this country said they wanted America to be safe again, that they didn't want dangerous criminals on our streets. I would encourage the elected leaders in that city and in that state to work with us so that we can do our operations without the kind of opposition and people that are conducting and perpetuating the kind of violent rhetoric that we're seeing today.
In that heated exchange, when Kristi Noem looked straight into the camera and declared, "You don't get to change the facts just because you don't like them," something deeper than a single incident in Minneapolis was put on full display. It was not just a defense of one agent's actions or a rebuttal to a reporter's skepticism. It was a portrait of how power speaks when it believes it is under siege, how authority frames truth when the narrative itself becomes a battlefield. Just hours after a person lost their life, before investigators had finished their work, before every angle of video had been weighed, the Secretary of Homeland Security stood firm and labeled the event with finality. In that moment, the weight of government language came crashing down, not as a question, not as a search for clarity, but as a verdict delivered in advance. The reporter pressed on what so many Americans were thinking. Why the rush? Why the certainty? Why define something so complex, so emotionally charged, before the evidence had been fully examined? Yet Noem's answer was unwavering. She insisted she already knew. She said she had spoken to officers and supervisors. She said she had seen the footage, and she said that was enough. In her view, transparency meant telling the public what she believed was true as quickly as possible. But there is a difference between transparency and haste, between sharing information and locking in a story. And that difference is where trust is either built or broken. What we witnessed was not just a clash between a reporter and a cabinet official. It was a collision between two ideas of accountability. One side argued that the public deserves immediate certainty, a clear narrative that defends those in uniform and affirms the government's authority. The other side argued that the public deserves patience, restraint, and the humility to admit that facts take time. That tension runs through every democracy. It is the space between power and the people, between institutions and the truth they claim to serve. Noem kept returning to one phrase, again and again, like a shield: the facts. She said the facts showed the vehicle was used as a weapon. She said the facts proved the officer acted according to training. She said the facts were on her side, and anyone who disagreed simply did not like them. But facts are not just statements. They are the product of investigation, of independent review, of evidence tested in daylight. When leaders declare the facts before the process has even begun, they are not revealing reality. They are shaping it. This is why moments like this matter so much. It is not about one press conference or one exchange. It is about whether our system still believes in due process, not just in courtrooms, but in the court of public opinion. It is about whether we allow power to speak in absolutes when the truth is still unfolding. When a life is lost, when communities are shaken, when the country is watching, the words of leaders carry enormous weight. They can calm a nation, or they can inflame it, they can invite trust, or they can close the door on it. The secretary argued that she was being open. She said this administration wants to give people the truth as soon as possible. But speed is not the same as honesty, and confidence is not the same as accuracy. True transparency is not about being first. It is about being right. It is about letting the evidence lead, even when the evidence is uncomfortable, even when it complicates the story you want to tell. As the exchange grew more tense, as the reporter pointed again to the video and questioned whether the situation was as clear-cut as the secretary claimed, what we saw was not just disagreement. We saw a government official unwilling to concede even the possibility of uncertainty. And that is what should give every viewer pause. A democracy does not need leaders who never doubt. It needs leaders who respect the process that turns doubt into truth. This moment also reveals something about the broader political climate we live in. We are in an era where every event is instantly pulled into a larger war of narratives. Every incident becomes a symbol. Every statement becomes a line in the sand. In that environment, admitting we don't know yet can feel like weakness. But in reality, it is the foundation of credibility. When leaders refuse to leave room for investigation, they are not protecting the public. They are protecting their version of the story. And the stakes could not be higher. These are not abstract debates. These are real people, real communities, real consequences. When the government speaks, it shapes how the country understands what happened, how it judges those involved, and how it moves forward. Words spoken too quickly can harden into beliefs that no later evidence can undo. The exchange you just watched was a reminder that accountability does not only happen in hearings or in courts. It happens in moments like this, when a journalist asks a simple, uncomfortable question: how do you know? That question is the heartbeat of a free society. It is what keeps power from becoming untouchable. It is what keeps truth from being decided by whoever speaks the loudest. In the end, this was not just about Minneapolis. It was about whether our leaders still respect the idea that truth is something we discover together, not something declared from above. It was about whether transparency means sharing everything we know or pretending we know everything. And it was about whether the American people are treated as partners in the search for reality or as an audience for a finished script. As the cameras fade and the hearing moves on, the questions raised here do not disappear. They linger, they echo, they demand reflection. Because a government that rushes to judgment risks losing the very trust it claims to protect. And a society that stops asking questions risks surrendering its right to know. That is why we bring you moments like this. Not to inflame, but to illuminate. Not to tell you what to think, but to show you what power looks like when it is challenged. If you believe in transparency, if you believe in accountability, if you believe the truth deserves time to breathe, then stay with us. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA and support our work to expose what really happens when the cameras are on and the stakes are real.